Good evening, and welcome to another Thursday evening with the Adjutant. Tonight, I want to tell you about something that took me far longer to understand than it should have. It wasn't about money, it wasn't about success, it wasn't even about failure. It was about being right. Now, before you smile and think, well, if I'm right, shouldn't I stand my ground? Now, hear me out. There's a difference between standing on truth and standing on pride. For years, I didn't always know the difference. I can remember a conversation that still comes back to me from time to time. It wasn't a shouting match. No one slammed a door. There wasn't some dramatic ending that belonged in a movie somewhere. It was just two people sitting across from one another, each convinced that they understood the situation better than the other. Every sentence became another piece of evidence. Every response became another opportunity to prove a point. I listened just enough to prepare my next argument. Not enough to understand. You nod while someone else is speaking, but your mind is already building the next sentence. You're not listening anymore. You're waiting. You're waiting for your turn. You're waiting to correct them. You're waiting to win. In that moment, you believe that winning the conversation is the most important thing. What you don't realize is that something much more valuable is quietly slipping away. There's trust, respect, connection, and peace. Those things rarely disappear all at once. They fade a little at a time. One conversation, one argument, one stubborn moment after another. See, looking back now, I can honestly admit something that I wish I had understood years earlier. There were times when I won the argument and still lost the relationship. At the time, it didn't feel that way. I walked away thinking, well, at least they know I was right. But what good is being right if neither one of us wanted to talk anymore? What good was winning the debate if the distance between us only grew larger? The older I get, the more I realize that wisdom asks different questions than pride does. Pride asks, how do I prove my point? Wisdom, on the other hand, asks, how do I protect this relationship without compromising truth? Those are not the same questions, and the answers are very different. Now, sometimes we convince ourselves that if people would just see things our way, everything would be better. But life has a way of teaching us that people are rarely changed by being defeated. They're changed by being understood. That realization didn't come to me overnight. It came through experience, through conversations I wish I could have back, through moments when I replayed my own words long after the discussion was over. Have you ever done that? You're driving somewhere or lying awake at night, and suddenly a conversation from years ago comes rushing back. Not because you were wrong about the facts, but because you were wrong about what mattered most. There have been moments when I could have chosen one more question instead of one more argument. I could have said, help me understand why you see it that way, instead of, here's why you're mistaken. Those two approaches may sound similar, but they lead to very different destinations. One builds a bridge, the other builds a wall. I've learned that listening is one of the greatest forms of respect you can give another human being. Listening doesn't mean you agree. Listening doesn't mean you abandon your convictions. Listening simply means you value the person enough to understand their heart before you respond to their words. That's a lesson I continue learning even today, because none of us ever graduates from learning humility. Humility isn't thinking less of yourself. It's thinking less about proving yourself. There's freedom in that. The pressure to always win every discussion begins to disappear. The need to have the final word starts losing its grip. You become more interested in leaving people feeling heard than leaving them feel defeated. Ironically, that's often when your words begin carrying the greatest influence. People lower their defenses. Conversations become honest. Relationships become stronger. And sometimes, disagreements that once seemed impossible to resolve begin to soften, not because either person surrendered their truth, but because both chose grace over ego. That doesn't mean every relationship can be prepared. Absolutely doesn't. Some people will still walk away. Some disagreements simply cannot be reconciled. But you'll know that your goal was never to conquer another person. It was to honor both the truth and the person standing in front of you. And that's a very different way to live. The older I become, the more I appreciate quiet strength, not the kind that has to announce itself, not the kind that needs the last word, but the kind that knows when to speak and when simply being present is enough. I've learned that some of the strongest people I've ever met were also the gentlest. They carried conviction without carrying arrogance. They could disagree without becoming disagreeable. And somehow people trusted them because they made others feel valued in disagreement. I believe that that's something worth striving for. The world gives us plenty of opportunities to argue. Social media rewards outrage. Television rewards conflict. Even ordinary conversations can become competitions if we're not careful. But real wisdom often grows in quieter places. It grows when we pause before responding, when we ask one more question, when we choose understanding before persuasion. I've discovered that peace isn't always found in proving your point. Sometimes peace comes from realizing that every disagreement doesn't require a winner. Some conversations are better measured by what they preserve than by who prevailed. If there's someone in your life you've been holding at a distance because both of you are waiting for the other person to admit they're wrong, maybe tonight is an opportunity to reconsider. Not because truth doesn't matter, truth always matters, but because love, mercy, patience, and humility matter too. Sometimes the greatest act of strength is taking the first step towards reconciliation. Whether it's accepted or not is beyond your control, but extending the hand is within your control. Now, as I continue walking through life, that's the kind of man I hope to become. A man who values people more than pride. A man who speaks truth without compassion. A man who leaves the conversation having built more bridges than walls. Thank you for spending another Thursday evening with The Adjutant. I hope this story gave you something to reflect on this week. And if it did, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Until next time, take care of yourself, take care of those you've been entrusted to love, and always keep moving forward with wisdom, humility, and purpose. Have a blessed evening, and I'll see you next Thursday. Shalom.